saw him, tripped when he was walking down the thing. He had a hard time walking up the stairs. He had a knee brace.
Dana White has went off on Jake Paul after Mike Tyson's health scare after the Jake Paul fight.
And Jake Paul couldn't do anything to him. He made a ton of money, and I know people are mad. You stayed home on a Saturday night, but you didn't pay for it. You know what I mean? And, you know, this is what Mike Tyson, when Mike Tyson shows up, everybody makes money, you know? Jake Paul is. Sure. You know, I don't have to tell you guys, you guys know. Mike Tyson is the A++++ side of that thing. And he was right.
Dana didn't hold back when he saw Jake struggle to KO Mike Tyson. Why? Because Jake Paul had been talking a big game about being the next big thing in combat sports. The problem was Tyson's age, health issues, and experience weren't enough to keep Jake from failing in front of a global audience. Dana's commentary on Jake's inability to do what was seen as the bare minimum, knock out Tyson, sets the stage for a heated look at the fight, the people involved, and how the world reacted. This is one of those situations when you lost but still won. I'm grateful for last night. No regrets to get in ring one last time. I almost died in June, had 8 blood transfusions, lost half my blood and 25 pounds in hospital, and had to fight to get healthy to fight, so I won. Jake Paul, despite all his hype, didn't manage to get Tyson down. Not only that, but Tyson was dealing with more than just age. He had blood clots, a knee injury, and he was carrying the weight of 30 years on his back compared to Jake's prime.
He actually outboxed the boxer. Jake Paul outboxed Mike Tyson like he said he was going to do. Did you not? Like every single round.
No, and yeah, then, like what do people say? Like I told everyone what I was going to do is to give him a...
Dana White, as outspoken as ever, wasted no time throwing shade at Jake Paul after his lackluster performance against Mike Tyson. For someone who talks so much about becoming the next big thing in combat sports, Jake Paul couldn't even manage to knock out a 60-year-old Tyson who had clearly passed his prime. And this wasn't just about age. Tyson had been through a rough time leading up to the fight. He was recovering from blood clots and had to wear a knee brace as he stepped into the ring. To top it off, Tyson actually tripped on his way in, making it even harder for Jake to make an impact.
I mean, if he wants to do boxing, why not fight guys that actually box for a living?
100%. Fight guys that box for a living and guys that are your age. How about that?
He says he wants to fight Canelo. I'm just saying what he.
Then why is he not fighting Canelo?
Canelo, I don't think Canelo wants to waste his time.
Yeah. I mean, it'd be a fucking 30-second payday for Canelo. So I don't know why Canelo wouldn't.
But despite all the physical challenges Tyson faced, Jake couldn't get the job done. Dana White wasted no time mocking Jake's inability to take down an older, injured fighter. In fact, he couldn't understand how Jake couldn't land a single knockout punch on a man who was essentially limping into the fight. To White, it was a clear indication that Jake Paul's skills were not at the level he kept claiming.
He said, I told him, Mike's basically 60 years old. He's like, you honestly think this fucking kid's gonna do anything to me? He's not good. He's not gonna fucking knock me out.
The truth was, Dana White wasn't just mocking Jake for fun. He was pointing out a glaring flaw in Jake's boxing career. For all the talk about Jake being the future of boxing, he couldn't do something as basic as knocking out a 60-year-old Tyson. White's criticism was rooted in the fact that Jake had built his whole persona around being a dangerous fighter, only to fall flat against someone who had been through the ringer both physically and mentally. Before the fight even happened, Dana White was vocal about how he felt about Jake Paul's choice of opponent. He argued that it wasn't fair for Jake to take on someone as old and physically compromised as Mike Tyson. In White's eyes, it was a cowardly move, using Tyson's age as a way to make himself look better. He saw it as a mismatch from the start.
He gets mad when I do this, but Mike's 60, man. I don't know. What do you guys think about it? Who gives a shit what I think? It's not my fight. I love Mike Tyson, you know, personally as a friend, and he's one of my favorite.
But things took an interesting turn when White shared a conversation he had with Tyson before the fight. According to Dana, Tyson had told him straight up that Jake Paul wasn't going to knock him out. Tyson's words came as a warning, and sure enough, Tyson was right. Jake couldn't even put Tyson down. This conversation between White and Tyson added a layer of credibility to Dana's mocking comments. It wasn't just that Jake couldn't knock out Tyson, it was that Tyson had predicted this outcome well before the fight even began. It was almost like Jake's Jake's performance was destined to fail from the start, and Tyson knew it. Jake Paul had been talking big about becoming a dominant force in combat sports. Yet here was Tyson, a man who hadn't fought seriously in years, telling everyone that Jake wasn't even capable of knocking him out. Dana White's criticism seemed even more valid after this exchange, and it painted Jake as someone who was all talk with no substance.
I'm sorry I didn't knock him out though,
Bro,
guys.
shut the
I'm
fuck up. It was
really
crazy.
sorry.
We talked about this. I told him
I'm
you were
sorry.
gonna say some dumb shit. You did the right thing at the end. You bowed. You kept it classy. You was wobbled. You did your thing. You didn't get greedy.
Yeah, after I seen him a little bit tired, I didn't want to put too much hurt on him, but I wanted the fans to get a good experience. But there was a point where all of my aggression and like super violence and like I'm gonna knock this guy out and show him, it went away when I wasn't getting hit much at all. And I don't know, I just
punches wasn't doing it.
Mike Tyson didn't just show up to the fight without a struggle. He had been dealing with some serious health issues in the lead-up. Tyson revealed that in the weeks before the fight, he had been suffering from blood clots, which nearly cost him his life. Despite this, Tyson managed to continue his training and eventually step into the ring against Jake Paul. This made Tyson's resilience all the more impressive. He was fighting not just Jake Paul, but his own health challenges. To think that Jake Paul, in his prime, couldn't take down a 60-year-old man who was still recovering from serious health issues speaks volumes about his skill level. Tyson's perseverance wasn't just about finishing the fight, it was about showing up in the first place. Tyson's determination to push through his physical struggles made the fight even more significant. And yet, Jake Paul, despite all the odds, couldn't capitalize on this opportunity. He couldn't take down an older fighter who had already faced adversity. In the grand scheme of things, Tyson's ability to still stand tall and fight was a victory, while Jake's inability to end the fight quickly became a symbol of his shortcomings.
Who is Jake Paul fighting next? Here, Dukatron. The next person Jake Paul is going to be fighting is going to be Muhammad Ali. Junior! I was watching that fight and I was just sitting down thinking, how the heck did people let this happen? Why did it get this far? I low-key felt sad. If bro does not fight Muhammad Ali Junior squared, bro is going to go to the next retirement home and he's going to just throw hands with anybody, bro, at this point. Even the commentators were thinking, bro, why doesn't bro fight somebody his own?
Dana White's concerns about Mike Tyson's health weren't just about Tyson being an aging fighter. He had been a close friend and ally of Tyson for years, and Tyson's health had deteriorated significantly before the fight. Tyson wasn't just up against a younger opponent in Jake Paul. He was battling his own body, dealing with blood clots that had nearly taken his life in the weeks leading up to the fight. For White, this wasn't just another matchup, it was a dangerous situation. Dana had always respected Tyson for what he accomplished in his career, but seeing the legendary fighter go through so much physically made him worry about what might happen if the fight didn't go as planned. White expressed concerns about Tyson being in the ring while dealing with these serious health issues. There was no denying Tyson's legacy, but at the age of 60, could he handle the physical demands of another fight, especially against someone much younger and physically capable like Jake?
But he's doing it. You know, what do I think of the Mike Tyson fight?
Yes.
Tyson's 58 years old. You know what I mean? Jake fought a guy who was his age and who was also
Fury.
considered a boxer, and he lost. So if you can keep fighting fucking 50-something-year-olds
You don't think Tyson has a chance?
and making a living at it, I think that Mike Tyson has a puncher's chance against anybody. Mike's 58 years old. You know what I mean? And
Right.
I hate doing this because Mike gets mad at me every time I do this, but Mike shouldn't be fighting.
However, when the fight finally went down, Tyson proved Dana's fears wrong. He made it through the match without serious injury, and for many, this was considered a victory in itself. Tyson, against all odds, had pushed through and survived. What was clear, though, was that the real loser wasn't Mike Tyson, who had faced a host of challenges in the lead up to the fight and still managed to stand strong. The real loser was Jake Paul. Despite all his talk of being the next big thing in boxing, Jake Paul couldn't do what everyone expected, knock out Tyson. Even though Tyson had blood clots, was 30 years older, and was wearing a knee brace to manage his injury, Jake couldn't finish the job. This failure highlighted the gap between Jake Paul's public persona and his actual boxing ability. For Dana White, this was a clear demonstration of Jake's shortcomings. Jake had boasted about his knockout power, his training, and how he was the future of boxing. But when push came to shove, he couldn't deliver against an aging, compromised fighter like Tyson.
Did you feel Mike's power at all?
No.
He hit you with one, and you gave him the tongue.
I only because the crowd like got turned up, but it didn't actually hurt. But I mean, no one's punches have like really hurt. I got buzzed a little bit against Tommy Fury.
After the fight, Jake Paul, still trying to stay relevant, decided to call out Conor McGregor. He made it clear during the post-fight press conference that he was interested in fighting McGregor next. In fact, he even suggested that he would take McGregor on in the UFC's cage, which many saw as an attempt to stay in the spotlight after his lackluster performance against Tyson. Conor McGregor, as expected, didn't take too kindly to Jake's bold claims. McGregor mocked Jake's performance against Tyson, questioning why Jake couldn't even knock out a 60-year-old man who had been dealing with serious health issues and still thought he could take on someone like McGregor. They are eyeing Pritchard Colon for next opponent.
What about you and Conor McGregor? Are you interested in that?
Yeah, he'll never do that though. He knows. He knows way.
One, he's under contract. And
he's
two,
not his own boss.
And two, he won't do it. He knows better. He might.
And it's
say,
funny to say like, yo, Conor McGregor is scared of Jake Paul and will never box him, but it's the fucking truth. And look at him go toe to toe with Nate Diaz, who was easy work for me. It was like a Monday sparring session to beat Nate Diaz's ass.
McGregor's mocking comments weren't just about the fight. They were about Jake Paul's place in the world of combat sports. McGregor's career has seen him take on the best fighters in the world, and he's been a 2-division champion in the UFC. For him, Jake Paul was nothing more than a sideshow. By calling out McGregor after such a disappointing fight, Jake was essentially trying to shift the narrative away from his failure and onto a bigger, more famous target. But McGregor wasn't fooled. He knew exactly what Jake was trying to do. In many ways, McGregor's mocking was a wake-up call for Jake Paul. The world wasn't going to let him get away with pretending to be something he wasn't. McGregor wasn't just calling out Jake for fun. He was showing everyone how far Jake still had to go if he truly wanted to be taken seriously in the combat sports world.
Jackass.
It wasn't just Dana White and Conor McGregor who turned on Jake Paul. The public, too, was quick to voice their disappointment. Jake Paul had been hyping up the fight for months, promising an exciting matchup against a boxing legend. He had been talking about how he was going to knock out Tyson, even claiming that he was the future of boxing. But when the fight actually happened, Jake couldn't deliver. Though he technically won the match, it wasn't a victory in the eyes of the public. People didn't see Jake as the victor. They saw him as someone who couldn't finish what he had started. The fact that Jake failed to knock out a 60-year-old man dealing with severe health issues made his performance seem weak. Fans had been expecting a spectacular knockout from Jake, but instead, they saw a fighter who couldn't even put away a man who had been knocked down by health problems long before the fight. In the eyes of the public, Jake had lost something more valuable than just the fight. He lost his credibility. The narrative that Jake Paul was a force to be reckoned with in boxing was shattered. He had spent so much time building up his persona as a skilled fighter, only to fail when it mattered most. Fans who had been excited about Jake's rise in the sport started to turn on him, feeling let down by his lackluster performance. His failure to deliver against Tyson raised doubts about his sincerity in the ring. And as the weeks went by, those doubts only grew. Fans and critics alike began to see through Jake's bravado and hype, realizing that he wasn't the boxing prodigy he'd claimed to be.
Am I the only one that thinks the Mike Tyson and Jake Paul fight last night was one of the weirdest atmospheres of any boxing fight I'd ever watched? I felt so weird watching that. Something just didn't sit right, a 27-year-old bloke going against a 58-year-old man. Not only any 58-year-old man, but like one of the best boxers of all time. I couldn't help but feel bad for Mike Tyson. I felt like he was boxed into a corner, and I don't mean literally by Jake Paul boxing him into a corner, although there were some points where that was happening. But I felt like everything around the fight and the promotion and the lead up and the story and the people in the suits behind the scenes, I felt like I was watching a caged animal. By no means somebody that knows everything about boxing, and I don't claim to. I have had one boxing fight that I raised money for charity for, and I did win, so I am 1-0, so come on, I know something. No, I'm just kidding. But I know a little bit about boxing. Watching his training leading up to the fight, to the performance, it just felt so inconsistent, and I felt so bad for him, like he was boxed into a corner, because you can see that beast in his eye, that all he wants to do if he steps foot into a ring is
One of the most talked about aspects of the fight wasn't just the performance itself, it was the money involved. Allegedly, Jake Paul was paid nearly double what Mike Tyson earned for the fight, despite Tyson being the one who had drawn in the crowd and brought all the attention. Tyson, a former world champion and one of the most recognized figures in boxing history, was reportedly paid less than Jake Paul, a fighter with far less experience and a much smaller following in the combat sports world. This pay disparity raised serious questions about Jake's character. How could Jake, who had been building his career largely through controversy and viral moments, justify making more money than a boxing legend like Tyson? It was clear that Jake wasn't just interested in fighting, he was interested in building a brand and capitalizing on his fame. The fact that he was allegedly paid more than Tyson, despite Tyson being the main attraction of the event, made Jake's actions seem even more self-serving.
Rounds. Jake Paul apparently is getting $40 million. Mike Tyson only getting $20 million. I'm shocked at that. The most famous boxer alive is getting a smaller piece of the pie. I mean, they're the reported figures, but I hope that's not true. Tyson deserves an equal half of this pie, in my opinion. He's the reason they're selling out this stadium, right? He's the reason why a lot of people are going to buy this, because Jake Paul's last fight against...
To many, this pay difference was a reflection of Jake's priorities. He wasn't in the ring to prove himself as a fighter. He was in it for the payday and the spotlight. Tyson, on the other hand, didn't need the money. He was doing it because he still had a passion for the sport. The fact that Jake was getting paid more only added to the perception that he was more interested in the business side of things than actually proving himself in the ring. The pay disparity also highlighted the flaws in Jake's approach to combat sports. While Tyson had earned his place in the ring through years of hard work and sacrifice, Jake was riding on the coattails of his online fame and leveraging that into financial gain. This only made his performance against Tyson seem even more underwhelming. If Jake was going to make more money than Tyson, he needed to back it up with a performance that proved he was worth the hype. In the aftermath of the fight, Dana White took a moment to reflect on Mike Tyson's career and legacy. Tyson, despite the odds, had survived the fight and come out unscathed. White expressed relief that Tyson was able to retire on his own terms, especially after everything he had been through physically. Tyson's decision to step away from boxing after making a substantial amount of money from the Jake Paul fight felt like the perfect way to end his legendary career. Tyson had faced a lot of physical challenges in the lead up to the fight. Blood clots, a knee injury, and the general wear and tear of age made it seem like the fight might not even happen. But Tyson pushed through, and by doing so, he showed everyone that his heart and mind were still sharp, even if his body wasn't what it once was. Tyson's decision to retire felt like a fitting conclusion to a career that had seen so many highs and lows. Dana White expressed his admiration for Tyson's legacy, acknowledging that Tyson had been one of the greatest to ever step into the ring. Tyson's final fight against Jake Paul, despite the disappointment of Jake's performance, didn't diminish Tyson's standing in the sport. Instead, it reminded everyone of what Tyson had accomplished during his prime. Tyson wasn't just a fighter, he was an icon who had left a lasting mark on the sport.
A plus side of that thing. And he was right. Jake Paul couldn't he was right, and I was wrong.
As Tyson walked away from the ring, it became clear that the real victory wasn't just in the fight, it was in Tyson's ability to leave the sport on his own terms, with his health intact and his legacy firmly in place. For Dana White, that was the real win. Tyson had been through so much, and yet he managed to end his career in a way that was true to his legacy. Mike Tyson's fight with Jake Paul ended up being more than just a matchup between an older legend and a younger fighter. It became a test of resilience, skill, and reputation. Tyson's ability to overcome his health struggles and still show up for the fight made him the real winner, while Jake Paul's inability to finish the job against an aging and injured fighter highlighted the gaps in his boxing career.
Friend Mike Tyson tweeted that he almost died over the summer. He said, he had a bunch of blood transfusions, just had to fight to get healthy, and then his performance yesterday against Jake Paul. Just your thoughts on what we saw.
Mike Tyson was right, and I was wrong.
Jake Paul, for all his hype and loudmouth bravado, couldn't back up his promises. Despite all the build-up and talk of knockouts, Jake was unable to do what many expected him to do: defeat a 60-year-old man who had been through serious health issues. This fight, instead of cementing Jake as a serious fighter, exposed his flaws and left him with more questions than answers. Dana White, Conor McGregor, and the public all piled on with their criticisms, making it clear that Jake Paul was not the fighter he claimed to be. Tyson, on the other hand, was able to retire on his own terms, having survived a challenging fight and secured a financial win. Tyson's legacy as a fighter remained intact, while Jake's reputation took a hit. Jake Paul may have won the fight, but the real victory belonged to Tyson. Tyson's health, his legacy, and his decision to retire with dignity proved that experience and heart can still triumph over hype and bravado. If you enjoyed, leave a like and subscribe. More videos are on screen now.